She didn't ask. She told. She used the small, soft voice she uses when she has already arranged something and wants me to step into the arrangement without resistance. By Friday morning, I had taken the turkey and the deed, and the dining room she had been redecorating in her head for the last 3 years had become a dining room she would visit, by appointment, for the rest of her life. Here is what actually happened. My name is Clarissa. I am 73 years old. My husband Beauregard died in 2020. He had been my husband for 48 years. He left me. On his death, a 4-bedroom colonial on Magnolia Lane, in a small Carolina town, where the dogwoods bloom in late March and the magnolias bloom in early May. And a woman my age, if she has kept her wits about her, may live the rest of her days in considerable peace. My daughter Saoirse is 45. She is married to a man named Wendell. They live 2 hours away, in a smaller city with a larger downtown. They have one child, my granddaughter Pemberton, who is 14 and who has, since the age of 6, called me Mormor, the way Beauregard taught her. This is, in many ways, an ordinary story. The Thanksgiving meal had been held at my house for 41 consecutive years. Beauregard had carved the turkey for 39 of those 41 years. I had carved it for the 2 years he had been too sick, in 2019 and 2020. In the 4 years since his death, I had continued to carve the turkey myself. I had served it from the head of the dining room table that Beauregard had built me in 1979, from a single piece of black walnut his uncle had given him for our 7th anniversary. The table seated 12 with both leaves in. The chair at the head was a high-backed Windsor that Beauregard had also made the only piece of formal seating he ever finished, and which I had been sitting in, on the 3rd Thursday of every November, for 41 years. On the Tuesday afternoon, 2 weeks before this Thanksgiving, my daughter called me on the phone. She used the small, soft voice. "Mom, hi. Listen, I've been thinking. About Thanksgiving. About the seating chart." There it was. I noticed the seating chart. I noticed that there had not previously been a seating chart. The table had been the seating chart for 41 years. The seating chart had been Beauregard at the head, me at the foot, our daughter and son-in-law on one side with our granddaughter between them, my brother, Caspian, and his wife on the other side, and whichever other relatives or close friends had been invited that year, filling out the remaining 4 seats. In recent years, since Beauregard's death, the seating had been me at the head, Saoirse at the foot, Wendell to her right, Pemberton to my right, and a rotating cast of others depending on the year. The seating did not require a chart. "Mom, listen, Wendell's parents are coming this year. I told you that, right? They flew in from Tucson last weekend, and they're staying through the holiday. And Wendell's brother Lyndall and his wife Marisol drove down from Charlotte yesterday. So we're going to be, I'm trying to count, we're going to be 12 at the table." 12, Saoirse. The table seats 12. There is no problem. Right, of course. But Mom, I wanted to ask you something, and I want you to think about it before you answer. I let the silence sit. "Mom, Wendell's father is 78. He's older than you, and he's used to certain things. He's a retired surgeon, Mom. He likes things a certain way. And I was wondering, would you mind, just for this year, sitting somewhere other than the head of the table? It would mean a lot to me. It would mean a lot to Wendell. We could put you there's a really lovely spot on the side, right next to Pemberton. She would love sitting next to you." I did not answer immediately. I held the phone to my ear, and I looked, through the window of my kitchen, at the dogwood Beauregard had planted in the spring of 1981, which had survived 4 hurricanes and was now 63 years old. The dogwood, in late November, was bare. Its branches were the color of dark, wet wood. I had been looking at this dogwood, through this window, for 43 years. The dogwood was not asking me to give up the chair. My daughter was. "Saoirse." "Yes, Mom? You want me to give the head of the table to your father-in-law?" "Mom, I want, for everyone to feel welcome. He's the oldest man at the table. He's a guest. I want the holiday to be Saoirse. Your father-in-law was last at this table in 2017. Beauregard sat at the head of this table that year. Your father-in-law sat in the third chair on the right. He was perfectly comfortable. He had 2 helpings of the cornbread dressing and asked me for the recipe. Mum, that was different. Beauregard was. Beauregard was alive. Yes. And now he is not. Mom, please, I'm not saying. Saoirse, I am going to say something to you, and I would like you to listen carefully, because I am going to say it only once. The chair at the head of my dining room table was built by your father in 1979. The dining room table was also built by your father in 1979. I have been sitting in that chair on Thanksgiving Day for 41 consecutive years, either beside your father or, since his death, in the chair he made and left for me. The chair is not a hospitality arrangement. It is not a courtesy that rotates. It is a piece of furniture made by a man who is dead and who built it in our 2nd year of marriage, expecting me to sit in it until I, too, am dead, at which point it will pass to you. I am not yet dead. The chair is not yet yours. The chair is also not yet your father-in-law's. The chair is mine. A long silence on the line. Then she said, very quietly, Mum, I didn't mean it like that. Sweetheart, I know you didn't mean it like that, but you said it like that. And you said it on a Tuesday afternoon 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, after I would assume a conversation with Wendell, who had had a conversation with his parents, who had perhaps suggested, gently, in the way these things are suggested, that they would be more comfortable if certain hospitality questions were resolved in advance. I do not blame you for relaying the suggestion. I do not blame Wendell for being asked. I do not even blame your in-laws, who are 78 years old and probably tired, and probably did not realize what they were asking for. I blame only myself, sweetheart, for the 4 years since your father's death, during which I have allowed the small, soft sentences to accumulate without responding to them, and for permitting today's sentence to be the natural extension of the previous ones. Mum, what previous ones? Saoirse, we will discuss the previous ones at a different time. For now, the answer to your question is no. I will be sitting at the head of my own table on Thanksgiving Day. Wendell's father is welcome to sit anywhere else at the table, including the foot, which is a perfectly dignified position. If that is unacceptable to you, you may choose not to come. I will not be offended, but I will not be moving. I expected her to argue. She did not argue. She said, Mom, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have let me think about it. Let me call you back. She hung up. I sat at my kitchen table with the phone still in my hand for a long time. I looked at the dogwood. I thought about Beauregard. I thought about the 4 years since his death, and the small, soft sentences my daughter had been delivering, and how I had laughed at each one of them, and changed the subject, and accepted, without ever quite acknowledging that I was accepting it, that I was being slowly recategorized in my own family, from the matriarch at the head of the table to a courtesy that could be relocated when the occasion called for it. I had been the courtesy for 4 years. I had not realized I had been the courtesy until that Tuesday afternoon, on the phone, with my hand on the kitchen table and the dogwood unmoved in the yard outside the window. I picked up the phone. I called my lawyer. Her name was Cordelia. She had drafted my will after Beauregard died. She had also, the year before he died, drafted something else, something Beauregard had asked her to prepare, which she had been holding in her office safe for 5 years, waiting for me to need it. I did not yet know about the second document. I only knew about the will. I called her about the will. Clarissa. Cordelia, I am sorry to call on a Tuesday afternoon. Clarissa, you have called me on a Tuesday afternoon exactly 3 times in 11 years. So whatever it is, the call is justified. Tell me. I told her. The seating chart, Wendell's parents, the phrase the chair at the head of the table, the soft voice. When I had finished, Cordelia was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, Clarissa, tell me what you want to do. I want to remove Saoirse from the house. Not the will, I do not want to disinherit her. I want to remove her from the deed structure as it currently stands. Beauregard and I had been planning, before he died, to add her to the deed as a future co-owner. I never made the change. I want to make sure, now, that the change cannot be made either by me, in a softer moment, or by anyone else who might, after my death, persuade her she was already on it. Clarissa, yes. I am going to ask you a question, and I want you to answer honestly. Have you ever discussed the deed with Saoirse? I have, twice. Once in 2021, when she suggested it would be easier for everyone if I added her name. Once in 2023, when she mentioned it again, at Thanksgiving. Both times I said I would think about it. Both times I did not, in fact, think about it. I simply did not change anything. Has anything been put in writing? No. Has Saoirse ever taken any action consistent with believing she was on the deed? She has, yes. In 2022, she suggested I have the roof replaced and offered to coordinate with the contractor. I let her coordinate. She drove down for the weekend. The contractor came. She told the contractor I overheard this, that the property has been in the family for 40 years. She did not say my mother's property. She said the property. A pause. Clarissa. The roof comment is, by itself, immaterial. But combined with the seating chart conversation and the two earlier deed discussions, it suggests a pattern of expectation. Your daughter is operating under the assumption that the house, while currently in your name, is effectively already partly hers. Today's call has clarified to you that this assumption needs to be corrected before it hardens further. Yes. Then here is what I would suggest. We do not simply leave the deed in your name. We move the house into an irrevocable trust. The trust holds the property. You retain lifetime occupancy. On your death, the property passes in trust to your granddaughter Pemberton, with my firm as trustee, untouchable by Saoirse. Accessible to Pemberton at age 25. Cordelia, Pemberton, not Saoirse. Pemberton, Clarissa, not Saoirse. The reason is not punishment. The reason is structural. If you leave the house to Saoirse, she will eventually deed it to herself and Wendell jointly, at which point Wendell, through community property, will have a claim. If she predeceases Wendell, the house passes to Wendell entirely. Wendell, in 12 years, may remarry. The new wife will then be living in your house. Beauregard's table. Beauregard's chair. This is the architecture of how houses pass out of families. Pemberton is the cleanest interruption of that architecture. She is your blood. She is 14. She will be 25 when she inherits. She will be old enough to know what the house means, but young enough to start her adult life in a paid-off home with a deed she cannot lose to a divorce or a creditor or a step-parent. I sat with that for a long moment. Cordelia, there is one more thing. Beauregard told me the year before he died that he had asked you to prepare something. I never asked him what. I want to ask you now. A long silence on the line. Then Cordelia said, very quietly, Clarissa, I have been waiting for you to ask me that question for 5 years. The document is in my office safe. I will bring it to your house on Thursday morning. We will read it together. We hung up. I want to pause here and ask you something honestly. If your daughter, your only daughter, the one you raised, the one you taught to read on your own lap when she was 4, called you on a Tuesday afternoon and asked you, with a soft voice and a careful phrasing, to give up the chair your dead husband built for you at the head of your own dining room table, what would you have done in the next 10 seconds? I think a lot of mothers would have said yes. I think some would have cried after hanging up. I think a brave handful would have said exactly what I said. I want to tell you why I said it. I said it because for 4 years I had been laughing my way through the small, soft sentences my daughter had been delivering, and each laugh had moved me approximately 1 inch further from the chair my husband had built for me. I had not realized I had moved at all until Tuesday afternoon, when she suggested I move the final visible inch. The final visible inch is the one a woman cannot, in good conscience, take. If she takes it, she will not be able to sit anywhere honest again. Beauregard had made the chair for me. Not for my daughter, not for my son-in-law's father, not for the seating chart. He had made it for me, with his own hands, in 1979. In a workshop he had built himself behind the dogwood, with the dogwood not yet planted, and our daughter not yet born. He had not made it, knowing I would need it for what I would need it for. But he had made it, and the chair was holding, in its black walnut frame, 45 years of small decisions Beauregard and I had made together, about the house, about our marriage, about how we would treat each other, about how we would expect to be treated by the people we raised. I was not going to give the chair to Wendell's father. I was going to do something else. I was going to give the chair, eventually, to Pemberton, through a trust, with Cordelia as trustee, untouchable by Saoirse. That was the decision I made on the phone call with Cordelia. I made it slowly, but I made it completely. Cordelia arrived at my house on Thursday morning at 10 o'clock. She brought a leather portfolio. We sat at my kitchen table, not the dining room table, because the dining room table was a piece of furniture. I was, in the moment, holding for a different purpose, and she set the portfolio on the kitchen table between us. She opened it. She slid one document across the table to me. "Clarissa, read this first." I picked it up. It was a letter, in Beauregard's handwriting, dated the 19th of April, 2019, 3 months before he died. "Clarissa, I asked Cordelia to put this in her safe. I do not know if you will ever need to read it. I hope you will not. If you do, it means something has happened that I am sorry I am not there to help you with. Here is what I think will happen. I think, after I am gone, Saoirse will begin asking you for things. She will not ask you for them in the way our parents ask their parents directly, with respect, on the assumption that the answer might be no. She will ask you for them in the soft voice she has been using since she was 14 years old. The voice that says, I would like for this to happen, and I have already decided that you will agree. I have heard that voice from her for 30 years. I never managed to teach her not to use it on us. I am sorry. The things she will ask you for will not be huge. They will be small. The deed, the seating, the contractor, the roof, the recipe, the Christmas dishes, the chair I made you. She will not mean it the way it sounds. She will believe she is being practical. She will believe she is being helpful. She will believe she is preparing you for a future that you are not yet ready to acknowledge. Clarissa, you are not the future. You are still the present. I have asked Cordelia to prepare an irrevocable trust that will hold the house. The trust is ready. It has been ready since April. Cordelia will not show it to you unless you call her for help. If you call her, the trust is there. Sign it. Put Pemberton as the beneficiary. Pemberton will know what the house means by the time she inherits it. Saoirse, I love her, but she has shown me for 45 years that she does not know what the house means. She knows what the house is worth. That is not the same thing. I love you. I am sorry I am not there. Beauregard. I read the letter twice. I did not cry. I set it down very carefully on the kitchen table. I looked at Cordelia. Cordelia. Yes. Beauregard wrote this in April of 2019. He did, Clarissa. 3 months before he died. He was very weak by then. He came to my office one Tuesday afternoon. I remember it was a Tuesday because I had had to cancel a deposition for him, and he sat in my conference room for 2 hours. He wrote that letter by hand. He signed the trust. He gave me both. He said, Cordelia, hold these. My wife is going to be all right. But if she is not all right, she will know to call you. Do not contact her. Wait for her to come. And you have been waiting. 5 years, 4 months, and 3 days, Clarissa. I looked at the letter again. I noticed the line, the chair I made you. Beauregard had specifically mentioned the chair. He had known. He had not predicted the seating chart. He had simply known his daughter, and he had known that one day she would, in some form or another, ask his wife to step out of his chair. He had not known how. He had not known when. He had only known that it would happen, and he had prepared for it 3 months before he died. I had not asked him what he had asked Cordelia to prepare. He had not told me. He had let me discover it on the day I needed it. That was a kind of love I had not previously had a name for. I looked at Cordelia. Cordelia, bring me the trust documents. She did. I signed them. The signing took 28 minutes. By 11:30 that morning, the deed to the house on Magnolia Lane was no longer mine. It belonged to the Beauregard Marchetti Family Trust, held by Cordelia's firm as trustee, with Pemberton Marchetti, my granddaughter, age 14, as the contingent beneficiary on my death, accessible to her at age 25. Saoirse was not a beneficiary. Wendell was not a beneficiary. The trust was irrevocable. I retained lifetime occupancy. I owed no one an explanation. I had not told my daughter. I would not tell her until after Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving Day arrived on the 3rd Thursday of November, as it has done every year of my life, and every year of Beauregard's. Saoirse called me on Tuesday morning, the day before Thanksgiving, and asked, in the small, soft voice, whether I had thought any more about the seating. I said, "Sweetheart, I have. I will be sitting at the head of the table. Your father-in-law is welcome to sit at the foot. The chair at the foot is the same height as the chair at the head. Your father made both of them. The same week, in 1979. He will be perfectly comfortable. I will be carving the turkey. Beauregard taught me how to carve in 1972. I have not forgotten." She paused on the line. Then she said, "Mum, okay. Okay, Mom. I love you. I'll see you tomorrow." "I love you too, sweetheart. Drive safely." We hung up. I noticed, in that exchange, that she had not argued. I noticed that she had not, in fact, argued all week. I noticed that the silence might mean she had decided to accept my decision, or that it might mean she had decided to bring her in-laws into the house on Thursday and let the physical fact of the seating chart resolve itself in whatever way it resolved. I did not know which. I set the table that afternoon. 12 places, the leaves both in. The good china that my grandmother had brought from County Cork in 1923, which had not been broken in 101 years of use, would not be broken on my watch. The crystal that Beauregard and I had bought on our honeymoon in 1972. The silver flatware that had belonged to my mother. Cloth napkins folded the way my mother had folded them. A centerpiece of magnolia leaves and white candles, the way I had done it for 41 years. I placed the turkey carving knife, Beauregard's knife, the one he had used for 39 years, at the head of the table beside my plate. I went to bed at 10. I slept the way a woman sleeps when she has decided something irreversible and is simply waiting for the next morning to arrive. Saoirse, Wendell, Pemberton, Wendell's father, Wendell's mother, Wendell's brother Lyndall, his wife Marisol, my brother Caspian, his wife Helene, and 2 of Caspian's grandchildren arrived between 11 and 12:30 on Thanksgiving morning, 12 at the table, as promised. When everyone had hung up their coats and made their way into the dining room, there was a small pause at the doorway. I was already seated. I was already at the head of the table. The turkey carving knife was on the placemat to my right. The turkey was on a platter directly in front of me, awaiting carving. I had a small white linen napkin folded across my lap. Wendell's father, a tall, white-haired man named Cornelius, retired surgeon, navy blazer, careful posture, walked slowly toward the foot of the table. He stood behind the chair at the foot. He looked at Saoirse. Saoirse looked at me. I looked at Cornelius. I smiled. "Cornelius, so glad you could come. Please sit. The foot of the table is yours." Cornelius nodded, the small, careful nod of a 78-year-old man who has correctly read a room, and sat down. The rest of the table arranged itself. Wendell's mother sat to Cornelius's right. Lyndall and Marisol filled in beside her. Caspian and Helene took their usual places. Pemberton sat to my right, where she had always sat. Saoirse and Wendell sat together on the other side of the table. I picked up the carving knife. I carved the turkey the way Beauregard had taught me to carve it in 1972, with the small, careful precision he had insisted on. The bird angled toward me, the breast carved in long, thin slices. The knife held lightly so that the weight of the blade did the work. I plated each slice carefully. Pemberton helped me pass the plates down the table. Wendell's father received his plate. He nodded at me again. He said, "Mrs. Marchetti, the bird looks beautiful." I said, "Thank you, Cornelius. Beauregard taught me how." He said, "Beauregard was a fine man." I said, "He was." We ate. The meal was, by all measures, perfectly pleasant. The cornbread dressing was a success. The cranberry sauce, which I had made the day before with frozen cranberries from the previous year's harvest, was praised by Wendell's mother. The conversation moved easily among the 12 of us. Pemberton told us about her ninth-grade history project. Caspian told a story about Beauregard from 1968 that I had not heard before. Wendell's father laughed at the story. Saoirse did not laugh. She was watching me. I knew she was watching me. I let her watch. At 3:47 p.m., I stood up at the head of the table. I tapped my water glass with my knife. "Before we move to the pies, I would like to say something briefly, and I would like you all to listen." The room went quiet. I looked at each of them. Cornelius, Wendell's mother, Lyndall, Marisol, Caspian, Helene, Pemberton, Wendell, Saoirse. Then I said, "Yesterday morning, I signed a document with my lawyer, Cordelia Marlowe, that transfers the deed of this house into an irrevocable trust. The trust is held by Cordelia's firm. I retain lifetime occupancy of this house. On my death, the house passes in trust, with continued professional trusteeship to my granddaughter, Pemberton, accessible to her at age 25. The deed change was registered with the county yesterday at 3 p.m. The document is irrevocable. I am announcing it now, on Thanksgiving Day, because it concerns this house, and because Thanksgiving in this house has been one of the most important traditions of my life. I wanted Pemberton to be told, here, in the room where she will, 20 years from now, sit at the head of this table on her own Thanksgivings. Pemberton's sweetheart, the house will be yours. In trust. When you are 25, Cordelia will be in touch with you on your 18th birthday with the full details. Until then, this is your grandmother's house, and you are welcome in it for as many Thanksgivings as I have left to host." Pemberton's eyes were very wide. I noticed Wendell's father set down his fork carefully. I noticed my brother Caspian was smiling, very slightly. I noticed Saoirse's hand had gone white where she was gripping her water glass. I sat down. "Now, pie." Saoirse did not say a word for the remainder of the meal. She helped with the dishes afterward, quietly, mechanically. She did not look at me. Wendell stayed near her. Wendell's parents made their goodbyes at 5:45. Caspian and Helene left at 6. By 7, only Saoirse, Wendell, and Pemberton remained. Pemberton went upstairs to read. Wendell and Saoirse stayed in the kitchen with me. Saoirse said, finally, "Mom, can we talk?" "Sweetheart, yes. Let's sit at the kitchen table." We sat. Wendell stood by the sink. Saoirse said, "Mom, I don't understand. Why didn't you tell me? Why did you do it without me?" "Sweetheart, I did it without you, because if I had told you in advance, you would have asked me, in the small, soft voice, not to do it. And I might have listened, in the small, soft voice, and I might have changed my mind. And then 6 months later we would be having this conversation again, in a different form, and the deed would not yet be in Pemberton's eventual name, and we would have had this exact same argument about something else. The silverware, perhaps, or the dogwood, or the chair. I did not want to have this argument 14 more times. I wanted to have it once. Mum, Pemberton. Pemberton is 14. She is not ready to inherit a house. She is Mum. She's a child. Sweetheart, she is not inheriting it now. She is inheriting it at 25, in trust. with a trustee who will manage the property responsibly until she is old enough to take possession of it. By 25, she will be old enough. She will also, by then, have had 11 more years of Thanksgivings in this house, 11 more years of watching me sit at this table, 11 more years of learning, from me directly, what the house means and what it cost her grandfather to build. You and Wendell would not have given her those 11 years of meaning. You would have sold the house. You would have called it the property, the way you called it that to the roofer. You would have used the proceeds to renovate your own kitchen. I am not making this up. I am repeating, almost verbatim, what your mother-in-law's family did with her grandmother's house in 2022, which you told me about at length over the phone in March of that year, and which you described to me as the smart thing to do. Saoirse went very still. Mom, I never said. Sweetheart, you said exactly that. I remember the phone call. You said it twice. You said Eulalia's family did the smart thing. They sold grandmother's house and used the equity to renovate Eulalia's place, where grandmother would have wanted them to live anyway. I remember it because it was the first time I understood, fully, how you and I were going to discuss this house once I died. I did not have language for it at the time. I have language for it now. The smart thing, in your vocabulary, is to convert houses your mother lived in into kitchens you live in. I have decided, with Cordelia's help, that my house is not going to be converted into your kitchen. It is going to be your daughter's house, in a trust, that you cannot reach. She put her face in her hands. Wendell, at the sink, did not speak. She said, very quietly, Mom, I am sorry. Sweetheart, I know. Mum, what about my relationship with you? What does this mean for us? Saoirse, it means we will have lunch together on the second Saturday of every month, at my house, alone, without Wendell. We will sit at the kitchen table, not the dining room, and we will talk about your week and my week, and what Pemberton is reading and what is in the garden. We will not discuss the trust. We will not discuss the deed. We will not discuss long-term planning. If you can sustain those lunches for 1 year, then in November of next year, Thanksgiving, we will sit at this table together, and Pemberton will sit between us. And you and I will have moved into the next chapter of being mother and daughter. If you cannot sustain the lunches, then we will reassess in November of next year. The lunches start the second Saturday of December. Noon. My house. Bring nothing. I will cook. She nodded. She wiped her face. She said, Mom, I love you. I love you too, sweetheart. That is why this is the conversation we are having. Wendell, at the sink, finally said, Clarissa. Wendell. I'm sorry too. I should have said something on the phone last week. When Saoirse was when we were planning the seating thing. I knew it was. I knew you wouldn't like it. I should have said so. I didn't. I looked at him for a long moment. Wendell, thank you for saying that. I am going to ask you to do one thing for me, in addition to the monthly lunches with Saoirse, which you are not invited to. I am going to ask you to take Pemberton every other Saturday to spend the afternoon with me. You will drive her down. You will return for her at 5. You will not stay. The time with Pemberton is between her and me. I want her to know me, and to know this house, in a way I should have insisted on years ago and did not. Can you do that for me? Yes, Clarissa, I can. Good. I stood up. It is late. Drive carefully going home tomorrow. Saoirse, sweetheart, drink a glass of water before bed. You look exhausted. She nodded. I went upstairs. I sat in Beauregard's reading chair in the bedroom, and I wrote one line in the small notebook I had started keeping, the morning after the Tuesday phone call about the seating. She told me not to sit at the head of the table. So I took the turkey and the deed, and I learned, at 73, that a chair built by a dead man in 1979 is not a piece of furniture, it is a promise, and that the only way to keep a promise is to refuse to give the chair to anyone who has not learned to ask for it the way the man who built it would have asked. Sometimes dignity does not arrive with shouting. Sometimes it arrives in a black walnut chair, at the head of a table built the same week In a dining room, a daughter wanted to redecorate from 2 hours away, and in a piece of paper signed in a lawyer's office the day before Thanksgiving. While the daughter was packing her car to come visit a house she did not know was no longer going to be hers. Then I closed the notebook, and I drank what was left of my tea, and I slept the way a woman sleeps when she has, finally, sat in her own chair, carved her own turkey, kept her own house, and answered her own daughter, not with shouting, not with cruelty, but with the slow, patient clarity of a black walnut letter her dead husband had been holding in a lawyer's safe for 5 years, waiting for her to be ready to read it.